Alright, I am back with part 7 of From Pages to Publishing. Hi, I'm Jalen Page, author of War of Broken Hearts, and today we're talking about editing. The bane of everyone's existence. Editing is gonna feel never ending, so buckle up, get ready for this ride. So depending on how much editing your book needs, you have to hire a different editor. There are like developmental editors, which is more of plot and story structure as a whole, and then it gets down to like line editors, which is exactly that, line by line, grammatical errors, spelling, punctuation, sentence structure, stuff like that. For War of Broken Hearts, I did not get a developmental editor. I felt like I did all that pretty good on my own and with my beta readers' help to like smooth out plot holes, anything like that. And when I did hire my editor, it was a line editor, so it was more of the nitty-gritty grammar, structure, sentence structure, stuff like that. And she also did say, hey, I don't think you need a developmental editor. Everything plot-wise seemed pretty good. I understand it. So I was very thankful for that. How I found my editor is I used a website called Reedsy, and it goes through, you can filter all these different editors. You can say, I want developmental editing, I want line editing, stuff like that. You can say, I'm a fantasy author, I'm a romance, I'm thriller. It goes through and you can filter out all these editors for your certain genre, and then you can choose a couple, like up to 5, and send out a request for them to get back with you with a quote. And it shows like all their credentials too, where they worked, how long they've been editing, stuff like that. So it's a very good website. The only downside of Reedsy is that they do an upcharge. So you're paying the editor and then you're paying a little bit more for using Reedsy's services. Other ways you can find good editors, but Reedsy is just that's my experience with my first book. But I've heard there's like Fiverr, there's people on like TikTok and Instagram that you can just reach out to. I've seen stuff kind of like what you do with like art commissions too. You can just find people out there. Or what I did to find my cover designer was I literally just said, hey, indie authors, do you know of a cover designer? You could say, do you know of a good editor? And that's how you can find it. That's why it's so important to build a community with other readers and writers on social media, because they are very helpful. For this part of the video, I'm mostly going to be talking about line editing, because developmental editing, I can't give advice on that because, you know, your story's not my story. You have to look at it from a whole story structure and character development wise, and I don't know anything about that for your story. But for like line editing, your editor, if you get one, will mostly help you with this, and they'll give you like an edited sheet of your thing, and then you go back and make those edits yourself to implement them and choose if that's what you want to include in your writing, because it is still yours overall. So yeah, the line editing part is pretty easy. It's more of like like I said, the developmental editing and stuff, focusing on your whole story and trying to avoid plot holes. That's the bane of our existence of editing. Line editing is just kind of tedious and annoying because you're like, oh, I'm so ready for this to get out there, but you do have to kind of make sure there's no typos and stuff, which, I mean, we're all human. There are some in there. I caught a typo in my book just rereading it the other day, and I was like, shit. But it's fine. It shows we're human at least and not using AI. But yeah, a lot of that is just focusing on cutting back on like crutch words and filler words like just, only, a lot of eyes doing movements to describe facial expressions or shrugging, just to make sure there's not excessively repeated motions or words in your book. And like all the basic little stuff, making sure you're using certain punctuation right in the right areas, like em dashes and commas, semicolons, whatever you're using, just making sure that they're being used correctly. And also like editing paragraph structures and making sentence structures, making sure there's some variation, some short, some long, because if they're all long sentences or all very short, choppy sentences, there's no flow. It's all kind of just the same thing going across the board, and that gets kind of boring as a reader, and it's just, it doesn't hook you, it doesn't draw you in. Whereas if you have those variation in sentences, like short, long, getting broken off, like interrupted, stuff like that, it sets you more into the story. So that's basically all I have on editing, because like I said, I'm not an editor, I hired one, so this is just my experience going across finding an editor. The next part of this video will be formatting, and I can teach you quite a bit on that because I did my own on Atticus.